recording that. So we are back here in our Protostructure. So what we recently finished creating is our diagonal axis. We created some vertical axis as well. So let us now create some multi-segment axis. To do that, what we need to do first is to get rid of this axis here. So that is deleting axis. So first of all, let's close our properties dialog to do that. So then close that over there. So to delete an axis, take note, to delete an axis, just select that axis and then press delete key on your keyboard and you have it just like so. Alternatively, you can also select that axis and then right click and you are going to find the option to delete. Alternatively, again, you can also do that by selecting the axis and then right click. You can do that by selecting the axis and then on your modeling, your tab, on the tab over there, you're going to find the option here that says delete. And then alternatively, you can do that by selecting all the axes by drawing a Windows selection key, a cross selection key rather, and then pressing delete on your keyboard. And then you are going to get that option that confirms that and then say okay. So let's now create a multi-segment axis. So to do that, click on the grid tool again. Now check the multi-segment axis insertion option just like so. Yeah, check that option. So now remember I said that multi-segment axis is used to create a single axis, not different axis, a single axis with multiple segments of any shape. That is, it can look anywhere you would want, anyhow you would want, trapezoid or any shape. So to do that, having checked that, the first thing you are going to do, specify your first point of insertion as usual. You are going to get that rubber band as you would expect. So then start by specifying a second point of insertion. When you do that, you are still going to notice that that rubber band continues and allows you to continue placing your axis as you would want. You can do that, yeah. So press escape key on your keyboard to cancel your previous points of placement. You can press escape key on your keyboard. Okay, have you seen it now? So you have now cancelled our previous point of placement, so you can continue placing our axis anywhere you want. So alternatively, you can also press shift plus F2 key on your keyboard to specify a particular distance, just like so. I choose 10 meters. So alternatively, you can also use your control key to align it the way you would want. And then finally, you can come down anywhere, maybe here, continue like that, and then you can come down here. So if you want to stop the creation of this, what you are simply going to do, what you need to do is just right click and then you are going to get rid of that in our continuous placement. So, and as you can see now, we have now created a multi-segment axis in a shape that looks, the shape is actually interesting though. So this is a multi-segment axis. So you can further create one in any shape uh, of your choice in any way you would want just by continuous placing them just like so. So this multi-segment axis is very useful, especially when you want to create crank top beam or diagonal beams. I mean bent top beams and all that. The reason is because when you place a beam along a multi-segment axis, it creates one singular beam along that axis instead of the software creating multiple beams that are joined. So that doesn't really help analysis and design. So multi-segment axis is very very useful. um Teniola, you can mute your mic if you can mute your mic. So Okay, so that is that. Press escape key to get rid of the creation activity. So select that and then delete. Confirm that. Okay, so let's now create a curve axis. So to do that again, go to your modeling tab over there and then click on the grid icon and you're going to have that. Now go to your insertion mode, specify curved axis insertion method. That is basically the third step of your axis creation. Let me highlight that so some of us don't know where we are. So that is the region that we are talking about. So specify, make sure you activate the option that says curved axis insertion. So we are going to have something just like so. So now to create your curved axis, just simply specify a first point of insertion. Then you can choose to hold down your control key. You can additionally choose to insert an axis length. So let's just leave it as that. So place your second point of axis placement. So now you are now going to get this, rubber band option, curved option that looks like this. So you will now have the option to now impute the offset distance from the center of that axis to the center of that curve. Are you following? So to impute an offset distance, you can choose to click anywhere to snap that, just like so. We have now created this. Or alternatively, when we have done this, we can now press shift plus F2 key on our keyboard, shift plus F2 key, and then we now have that option to impute the offset distance. Let's say 3000 millimeters as the offset, 3000 millimeters as the offset distance, and then say enter. So this is basically what you have now successfully achieved. So this is just a curve axis. So this curve axis is very very important, as well as you can use that to create your bent up beams, beams that are curved. So you can use these options, this axis option, to create your curved beams. Yeah, and it will work perfectly well. So that is basically that about the first option that we have here, which is creating axis by using the grid tool. So now let us now use the orthogonal axis generator option to now create our axis. So to do that, I would prefer that we delete this so that it's not going to be too the workspace is not going to be too choked up. So let's select that by drawing a windows. Yeah, and then say delete on our keyboard, and then we are going to have that option and say okay. So let's remove this and then let's get rid of that. So now a an orthogonal axis, the orthogonal axis generator is basically used to build a system or a group of axes quickly. Are you following? Just instead of creating one of the axes one after the other, and creating one axis and then the other and then the other. So this tool here, the orthogonal axis generator, is used to build a system of axes quickly by just specifying the axis distance and then the spaces, number of spaces you would want between your axis, and then the distance between those spaces. You just click on that option and then specify them. So let's do that. Go to your modeling tab, just like so, orthogonal axis generator. When we have now clicked that, then the next thing we need to do is just specify any point on our screen as our reference points, just like so. So once we do that, this is the more important dialog that we need to concentrate on. So here we have our orthogonal axis generator dialog, just like so. So in this dialog, we now have the option. Here we have the direction 1 axis, and then we have direction 2 axis. So this direction 1 axis are basically your horizontal axis, then the direction 2 axis are basically your vertical axis. So the label for those axes that will be running in the direction 1, let's leave it as A, and the label for the axis in direction 2, let's leave it as 1, so that they can go 1 2 3 4, and the horizontal axis can go A B C D and all that. So we are going to be having um an opportunity, we are going to be creating an opportunity for us to entertain questions. So if you have questions, just hold on a little bit. After this, I can now leave the ground for us to say our questions. So here we have the axis spacing. So here basically means the spacing that we would want between those axes. This place that says 5,000. So what we have to input here is the distance between these axes and then the number of spaces that we want between these axes. So we can say if you want the axis to have 3 meters distance apart from each other, just say 3,000 millimeters and then type star asterisk the number of spaces that you would want. So if I want four, spaces, I can just say 3,000 asterisk 4. So here is just the extension length. And here for the direction 2, let's leave the axis spacing at 5,000 millimeters, and then this spacing, the number of spacing between those axes as 3. So when we finally say okay, this is what we are now going to get, automatically we have now created a system of vertical and horizontal axis just by specifying that. So here you are going to notice in that properties dialog, we specify the horizontal axis, the distance of the horizontal axis as 3,000 millimeters, and then we say the number of 3,000 millimeters spacing that we would want should be 5, and here is what we got, 4 actually. So we got 1 2 3 4. Can you see it now? So Protostructure automatically provides these dimension lines that you can use to track your axis dimensions, just like so. Can you see it now? So here we have your 3,000. The distance between these two places is now 3,000, and the number of that is 1 2 3 4. Can you see it now? So that is very very basic. And here for our vertical axis, the spaces between them 5,000 millimeter, and we left that to be 3 spaces of 5,000 millimeters. Okay, thank you, Mr. Engineer Henry. So here is our orthogonal axis that we have now successfully created. So you can see how we are able to do that quick enough. So this axis now, let us now explore the structure tree. If you are observant, you are going to notice that every single axis that we now create have now responded to their respective folder in this structure tree under the axis folder. So we have 1 2 3 4. We have 9 axis, and here we have that 9 axis, and here we can find the label of those axes here. So we can select an axis on our modeling screen, and the axis will now be automatically selected on the structure tree. We can choose to select another axis. You can see now it is now selected on the structure tree. So alternatively, we can also choose to select our axis from this directly from the structure tree. So you can click here to select the axis 4, and you are going to notice here the red one. The red colored one means that it has now been selected, just like so. So we can select our different members or any entity at all from the structure tree. So that is what we have. So we can now choose to modify this axis. So okay, to do that, let us now explore the different ways we can now modify axis. So I would like to make sure that you understand this. So to do that, I'm going to create one axis one after the other, and then go through the number of ways that we can modify it. so that you can be able to understand that. So to do that, let me delete this axis by selecting all of them and then delete. So I believe that each and every one of us understand this orthogonal axis generator, like the main concept about that. So we are recording this video. If you are finding difficulties understanding that, you can watch the recorded videos. They are going to go a long way to explain that for you. So let's now explore the different ways we can now modify an axis. So let's create one axis, 2 meters, then say enter, control, enter. So I've now created a horizontal axis. Do that if you have not already done so. So we have our horizontal axis. Now select an axis, and then when you right click, you are going to find the different options of the things that you can actually do with this axis. So you have the option to delete that, mirror that, measure that, offset the axis, move the axis to a different position, rotate the axis, stretch the axis to member insertion, and all that. So you are going to also notice that whenever you select an entity or an axis, what happens that a tab opens up in the menu tab, showing the properties of that axis and different things that you can be able to do with that axis. So we have here our,
Please, sir. Sorry, sir.
yes.
Don't be offended. My network logged me out. Logged me out. So please, how did you insert this grid line? There was this axis. Just how you inserted it. Thank you.
Okay, he is asking how I inserted this axis, this particular one, or the one behind. So that's
Yes, that particular one.
this one, the one that I selected.
Yes, yes.
Okay, that's pretty simple. We have done that in our first call. I believe you were there, but for let's do that again. To do that, go to your modeling tab, click on the grid icon, select your first point of insertion. You are going to get a rubber band, and then hold down on your control key to ensure that you are placing it in a vertical plane. Your axis is very vertical, and then release and then click at that point. So automatically you have
Thank you. I've gotten it. Thank you so much.
so that is that. So now whenever you finish creating an axis, it is very very important to close the properties dialog, because once the properties dialog is still active, you are going to find out that you cannot select anything on the screen, because when you want to do that, you will now be creating, you find out that the software will now be trying to insert or create other axes. So it is very very important that you close your properties dialog, so whenever you finish creating your axis. So we have that just like so. So now let's now start exploring the different things we can be able to do with this axis. So select an axis, then right click, and you are going to find offset axis, or alternatively you can select that axis, go to the axis tab that opens here, and then select offset axis. So you can drag and snap that over there, or alternatively you can press shift plus F2 key for accuracy, so that you'll be able to insert the exact offset distance of that axis. So say 1000 millimeters for instance, and then say enter on your keyboard, and then say enter. So when you have done that, you get the option to continue placing the axis upwards. So you will still have the option to say shift plus F2 key on your keyboard again, and then input the axis distance. So let's change that distance to 3000 for instance, and then say enter. So this is what we have now gotten. So have you now seen that we have now offsetted this axis upwards, and that is what we now have. So if I want to offset this axis downwards, what I will do is select the axis, right click on your keyboard and then say offset axis. So press shift plus F2 key on your keyboard. So when I wanted to go up, I just inserted the offset distance, but now I want to go down. Plotting your it is just like plotting your graph.
Please, sir, you say we should click shift and what, sir?
Shift plus F2 key on your keyboard. So this video is going to be recorded. So I advise you to just focus on understanding what I'm doing. So later you will still have the option to watch the video, replay the video as you would want, go forward and backwards so that slowly, so that you can now understand that. So for now, let's just focus on understanding what is going on so that we will not be able to miss anything, because when you are watching, you are learning, you are trying to do that immediately, it's going to go a long way to distract you. So now, since I want to offset this axis downward, so I'm now say minus 4,000 millimeters. Since I'm going down, for example, minus then 4,000 millimeters as the instance of the distance I want to go, and then say enter. You can see now this axis have now gone downwards. So you can now see that the offset distance is still indicating minus 4,000 millimeters. So if I want to offset that to the other direction, I can now say, I can now impute the offset distance without saying minus. Are you following? So let's also do that for a vertical axis. To do that, let's create an axis, a vertical one. Hold down your control key and then have it like that. So now select this axis, right click and then say offset axis. So you are going to get this ribbon again. So press shift plus F2 key on your keyboard and you are going to have the option to insert the axis offset distance. So if I want to offset it to the right, I just say 2,000 millimeters. If I want to offset it to the right by 2,000 millimeters, I just press 2,000 millimeters and then say enter, then press escape. So let's select that axis again and then right click and then say offset axis. This time I'm going to offset it to the left by 2,000 millimeters. So what I'm going to do, shift plus F2 key, then instead of pressing 2,000, I say minus 2,000 millimeters, because now we are moving to the left, and then say enter. So we are going to have something like this. So we have the option to continue inserting that and continue going. So this is basically how you offset your axis. So now let us learn how to move our axis. So to move an axis, select the axis that you would want to move, right click and then say move. Alternatively, you can go to the axis tab over there and then say move. So let's just say move here. So can impute your distance that you want it to be moved. So say shift plus F2 key on your keyboard and then let's say for instance 7,000 millimeters and then say okay. So this is now what we have now done. This axis was here, so we have now completely moved it from this region to that place. So that is basically how you move your axis. Now to rotate an axis, select that axis, go to your axis tab there and then select rotate, click on rotate. So what you are going to do first is to pick the base point to rotate the axis from. That is like the pivotal point. You have the option to either pick in the middle or any of the free ends. So let's say at this free end to be our point of rotation. Click it and then we have the option, we have this rubber band that looks like this. So we will now have the option of snapping it anywhere we want, or alternatively we can just say shift plus F2 key on our keyboard and then impute an angle of rotation, an angle of rotation. So let's say 20 degrees in this case and then say enter. So when we have done that, this is what we are now finally going to get. Have you seen now? We have now moved this axis. We have rotated that, and here is what we have. So basically, that is that about that. So let's now explore more options of what we can also do with this axis. So we can also choose to stretch this axis. To do that, select an axis. To stretch an axis, select an axis, right click, and then say stretch axis. So when we have done that, what we need to do is to pick a point, an end point that we want to be stretched. We have the option of picking this end point or this end point. So to do that, let's assume we want to stretch this end point. Click that and then drag that all the way to anywhere we want and leave that there. We have now successfully stretched this axis. Let's do it again for this axis. Select this axis, right click, or let me say in this case, select this axis and go to the stretch axis here on your axis tab and select an endpoint that you want to stretch. You can choose to stretch it from this endpoint or from that endpoint. So select that endpoint and then say Shift plus F2 key on your keyboard to input a stretching distance. So in this case, I would assume 5,000 millimeters and then say enter. So we have now successfully stretched this angle, this axis additionally by 5,000 millimeters. So we have other options and other things that we can also do with this app, with this axis, other ways you can modify this axis. We are going to be going through all of that as we go through our modeling process. But for now, this is going to go a very long way to helping you in your modeling and design. So this is basically what you are going to need for now for the basics. Okay, that is that about our axis modification, orthogonal axis generator, and creating axis using the grid icon. So let us now create axis by using the DXF drawing format, that is importing axis. So remember I said that the DXF import. Okay, to do that, go to the building setout tab and you're going to find this option that says external reference drawing. So external reference drawing. So this method of creating axis is basically used to import all axes from a DXF drawing file from AutoCAD or any DXF integrated drawing software. You can only use the DXF import option for an entirely new project, that is a project where you have not created any axis at all. So this project that we are working on now, we already have axis. So let's delete that. Select that and then say delete on your keyboard and then say okay. So now we can only use this option of creating axis. This is basically if you have now done your general arrangement, you have drawn axis using AutoCAD. So you can now use this option to import that axis now to Protostructure or to select the external reference drawing and use that external reference drawing to trace down your axis. So click on the external reference drawing to. So we are going to have this option. So what you're going to do is to locate that where you have now saved your file. So in this case, I saved my file in my desktop. Yeah, that is the DXF file. Say open. Wait for a few seconds for it to load. So this DXF file, I'm going to be dropping it in the group. This file, I'm going to send it to the group because you are going to be using this file, this particular DXF file for your assignment. So this, your assignment says get any complex or simple architectural plan and do a general arrangement drawing and grids creation. That's basically create your grids. That's what that means. So if you don't have a a drawing already, like a DXF drawing, I'm going to leave this particular drawing on the group so that you can use that to do your assignment. So let's go back to our Protostructure. So now we have now done that. We have now added that DXF file. So what we are going to do is to say active here. Click on active to activate that. And when you do that, you are going to notice instantly the DXF drawing is now showing in our background. So we have these options to, okay, say okay. Have you seen it now? This is what it's going to look like. So go back to that external reference drawing and then click on this option that says use color and then say okay. So the color is now going to appear. So this color makes it more appealing and easy to track and know what you are doing. So this is the drawing, that's the DXF drawing file that we are now going to be using for our assignment. So this is basically an architectural drawing. The architectural components of the building have all been removed and we only have the this system of walls and all that, and then our staircase voids. So here we have our rectangular shaped um, elements are actually representing your columns that are all in red colors. Can you see them? As you can see now. So this rectangular shaped lines are your columns. So we are going to show you how to do that. So now to create an axis using this external reference drawing as a reference for creating your axis. So simply go to your modeling tab and then click on your grid icon. So Protostructure recognizes this DXF drawing in your project. So you have the option to trace it when you get to the end of the line here. So you are going to notice this square icon that says endpoint, this square shaped thing that pops up and says endpoint. So just click on it once and then trace it down and then select the first one. So can you see now we have now successfully created this one. So pay attention because this is the exact same way that you are going to be doing your assignment. So we have now created our first one. So to create our second one, let's leave the second option as A. Then the next one is going to follow as B. Trace it down and then hit here. So you have now created that. So do this one the same way. Hit there. So make sure you are selecting the endpoints of those axes. So these black lines are basically your axis. So continue doing that just like so. Continue creating that just like that. So I hope you are following. So let's now, before creating the horizontal one, let us change the label to 1 so that the horizontal ones are going to take that label as 1. And then start creating that. Have you seen now? This one has now automatically been set to 1. Continue creating that. The next one will be automatically be labeled as 2. No. Okay, we have that like so. And then the next one will be automatically labeled as 3. Make sure you select the endpoints and there we have it. So the axis 6, then this one should be 7, and then finally you have here 8. So this is basically how to create your axis using the DXF drawing format. So we now have these axes over here. So now let's go to the 3D view so that you can now see what we have now successfully achieved. So go to the 3D view by going to the views tab and then say 3D physical model. Click that once and then we are going to find this 3D view. Right click, hold down on your right click button to be able to shift this around just like so. Yeah, and that is our 3D physical model. So go back to the plan view. So now we have now successfully finished creating our axis. This is what is in our agenda. Introduction, we have done that. Can you still see my screen? Can you still see my screen, everyone?
Can't see your screen, sir. I don't know
Yeah, I can
if
see the
it's
screen.
only from my end.
Okay, I noticed that. Okay, can you see it now?
Yes.
Yes, sir, we can see it.
Okay, that is very good. So, what I was saying is that we have now successfully covered the introduction. We have now successfully covered the introduction, and we have now treated axis creation, properties, modification, orthogonal axis. We have now treated external reference drawings, and then the DXF import will be coming in later. This is a very, um, a very tool, a tool that is very tedious to work with. So we usually cover that in our advanced classes, but we are still going to be treating that in our second day lesson. So the thing that is remaining, the only option in our agenda that is remaining for us is our columns creation and properties. So we are going to be doing that right now.
So we didn't see how you converted to 3D, sir.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So to go
Yes.
to your 3D view, just go to your building setup, your tabs here. You have your building setup, modeling, loadings, and all that. Go to the views tab. So you are going to see the 3D physical model and the plan view. The plan view is where we are on now. So you are going to see the 3D physical model. Just click on that once and wait for some minutes. So this is what the 3D physical model looks like. So when we now add columns and beams, this is going to make more sense. So here we have the 3D rebound model and then the analytical model. So these two options are only useful these two options are only useful when we have now created modeled our members and then analyzed and designed them. That is the only time that if we click on these options, analytical model and 3D model, rebound model, we are going to be seeing something different here. So for now we only have our 3D plan view, 3D physical model, and then our plan view. Additionally, we have this option to tile that horizontally or vertically in any way we want. So let's say tiling that vertically, and we will have this. We have the option to tile that horizontally as well. So have you seen it now? So let's just say reset to leave that just like so. So I hope that is very clear. Yeah.
Yeah, yes, sir.
So I'm going to be sending this particular DXF file to the group chat. What you are going to be doing as your assignment is just as simple as what I have just done. Go to your building setup tab, click on external reference drawing, click add, find where you saved it as, then activate it, use colors, say okay, and then go to your modeling, click on grid, and then start adding the tracing down the lines by adding your grids. So that is basically that. So now let's now go to our column. So to create your columns, just simply go to your modeling tab, and then we have here your reinforced concrete members section. We have your RC columns, your reinforced concrete shear walls, RC beams, RC slab, rib slab, slab strips, and pretty much all your um reinforced concrete members here. So to create a column, simply go to that modeling tab over there. Go to your modeling tab just like so, and then click on column. So before we do that, let's try to turn off the our external reference drawing. So let's go to our building setup tab, click on external reference drawing, deactivate it, and then say okay. So that external reference drawing has now disappeared. So we only have our system of grids just like so. So go to your modeling tab, click on column, and we are going to have something that looks like this. So you would notice this column properties dialog again. So anytime you select an entity or a member, you're going to notice the properties dialog of that member. So let us explore this properties dialog a little bit. So here we have, yeah, we have talked about our axis, single segment, multi-segment, and all that. And here we have our column properties dialog. So here is the column properties, and we have the label to be like that. So we have the option to change it in the software. Here it says 1:1. That's 1:1 means it's a column in story 1 and the level of it is column 1. So when we dive back in our Protostructure, I'm going to explain that as well. Here we have your length of story over here. So here your length of stories. And here we have also your B1 and B2. So B1 simply means the width of your column, and the B2 simply means the breadth of your column. So I believe you understand this if you have been in a civil engineering class before. So this is just basically explaining the cross section of the column, what it will look like. So B2, you can see it says 500. B2 is just the vertical side of the column, and the B1 is the horizontal side of the column. So it's called width, and the B2 is called breadth. So we have that just like so. And here we have your eccentricity. So eccentricity Your eccentricity is basically a distance measured from the center of a column to the perimeter of that column. That is what we call eccentricity. So eccentricity is a term that is used in advanced structural analysis. So if you are a student, you will encounter that when you have now gotten to your 500 level. It is actually used for some advanced structural analysis, and if you have encountered that, you would actually understand exactly what you are talking about. So eccentricity is a distance that is measured from the center of a column to the perimeter or the boundary of that column. So this eccentricity is very useful when you want to flush a column to an adjacent wall or something like that. So I will advise you to look into this eccentricity, but for now, we are not going to be adding any eccentricity in our column. It is basically used for advanced structural analysis and all that. So when we forge ahead in our class during the advanced sessions, we are going to be talking about all of that. So let's go back to our prota structure. So now we have now selected our column, and then we have this column properties dialog. So to now insert our column, remember that we can only insert our concrete members or our members when we have when and where we have an intersection of column. So just like here we have this intersection of axis 1 and axis A. I mean intersection of axis rather. So where we have intersection of axis, that is the only place that we can now insert our columns. So let's insert a column here. So wait for some seconds for the software to respond to that. So now we have now successfully had it. So you can see that we left the label as 1:1. This is the label 1:1. and then the breadth of the column, that is the B1, is 500 in this case, 500 by 250. You can see that. So we can still change that if we want. We can further change this to, let me say, 450, and then say update, and we are going to notice that it's going to shrink a little bit. So you can even change this to 250 by 250 column, and then say update. We are going to find that here. So the eccentricity in this case is 0. That is why we have it just like so. So we can now continue placing our columns anywhere we want at every axis intersection. When you hover around an axis intersection region, so you are going to get this snapping option that says axis intersection. You can just click once to have that just like so. Then continue clicking at different axis intersections where you would want columns. Alternatively, you can add your columns quickly by drawing a selection, a window selection, just like so. And when you draw a window selection, every axis intersection that is enclosed within the boundary of what you have just drawn will automatically have columns inserted in them, just like so. So when I now draw this window selection just like this, every axis intersection will now automatically have columns inserted inside of them. So our call is going to end in 12 minutes. So this is basically what we have now successfully achieved. So let us go further to start continue drawing our selection and having columns inserted them one after the other. So let's insert this one manually, and then let's go to our 3D views to see what we have now successfully achieved. So here in our 3D view, we have now successfully added these systems of columns. As you can see now, we have our vertical columns inserted and in this in the axis. So let's go back to our plan view. So this is what we have now successfully achieved. So let us delete this system of columns. So this is how we are now going to be doing your assignment. Select the columns and then delete them. So go back to your building setup tab, go to your external reference drawing, activate that, and then say okay, we are going to have that external reference drawing back. Go to your modeling tab, select your column, make sure the breadth and width of your column is a square column. Let's say 225 by 225 in this case. That is your 9 inches column, 225 by 225 millimeters. And then you can now be tracing all these thread points where we have these red squares. That is your columns. That is where you are now going to be placing your columns, just like so. So this is what I want to see in your assignment. So when you have now selected your um external reference drawing, you have now added it, create your grids just like so. After creating your grids, you can now start inserting your columns in the axis intersection where we have them just like that. So at those places, those points, those are the places that you now insert your columns. So I'm going to leave this external reference drawing. I'm going to make it available in your in our group chat so that you can now access it and follow suit and be doing what you are doing, following up in what you are doing. So in this red squares, that is where our columns are going to be placed. So let's continue placing that here. Place one over there, and I will now place one there, and then place one over there, and place one more over there. Okay, this axis was actually not drawn well, it's going diagonal, so that's a mistake. We are going to correct that in our external reference drawing before posting that. So let's place this one at that place and then have one here. So this is what your assignment is expected to look like. So press escape. So this is now what you have now created. So go to your 3D view. This is what our columns are now going to be. This is what they are going to be looking like when you have finished yours. So now for your assignment, you are going to do the exact same thing that I've just done. Just get an external reference drawing, the one that will be posted in the group, import it to your software, and then open a project, then trace down the grid lines as your axis, and then insert your columns just the same way I've done them. They are very, very, easy. They are very easy. So what you are going to do, I would like you to record this video. So now to rotate all this, the way I'm doing is just hold down on your right click, and then you can now be, changing it and rotating it the way you would want. So that is that. So what you are going to do here is that you are going to record this. You are going to use either your phone, a good camera, and record this. We don't want pictures, so just record that and then post it on your LinkedIn page with the necessary hashtags. I'm going to drop that in your group chat as well. So with the necessary hashtags, post that on your LinkedIn page. Use your phone to record what you have just done. Or if you have your recording softwares on your system, you can also record that. So we usually have our assignments submitted before our next classes. So our trainings are usually Mondays, Wednesdays, and Friday. So we have your Tuesdays and we have your Thursdays. The reason we left it like that is for you to have an opportunity to have a recess and go back to what you have done, watch the videos, play it forward and play it backwards, then do your assignments, and then prepare very well for our next class. So, with that being said, I think we have now come to the end of our training session for today in Protostructure.